than the mind. All right, here we go. John chapter 20, beginning in verse 1. Very early Sunday morning, before sunrise, Mary Magdalene made her way to the tomb. And when she arrived, she discovered that the stone that had sealed the entrance to the tomb was moved away. So she went running as fast as she could to go tell Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved. She told them, "They've taken the Lord's body from the tomb, and we don't know where he is." Then Peter and the other disciple jumped up and ran to the tomb to go see for themselves. They started out together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He didn't enter the tomb, but peeked in and saw only the linen cloths lying there. Then Peter came behind him and went right into the tomb. He too noticed the linen cloths lying there, but the burial cloths that had been on Jesus' head had been rolled up and placed separate from the other cloths. Adam's sin by eating forbidden fruit, he sins by eating forbidden fruit, and his response to his own transgression is to hide. Peter flatly denies the Lord 3 times, locks gazes with the Lord, and the response to his transgression is to run and go try to find the one he violated. Adam and Eve sin, and their response is hide. Peter sins, and his response is run into the presence of the one who just a moment ago you locked gazes with. I've talked about some of this before, but there's some pieces to this the Lord's showing me right now that are absolutely transforming me, because it's another distinction between Abba and Judge. Peter knew something about the nature of God Adam did not. Okay, now look at John 21. John 21, 1. Oh man, this is a lot. Okay, John 21, verse 1. Later, Jesus appeared once again to the group of disciples by the lake Galilee. It happened one day while Peter, Thomas the twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, Jacob, John, and 2 other disciples were all together. Peter told them, "I'm going fishing." And they all replied, "Well, we'll go with you." So they went out and fished through the night, but caught nothing. Then at dawn, Jesus was standing there on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was him. He called out to them, saying, "Hey guys, did you catch any fish?" "Not a thing," they replied. Jesus shouted to them, "Throw your net on the starboard side and you'll catch some." And so they did as he said, and they caught so many fish that they couldn't even pull in the net. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." Now, in John 20, when he went to the tomb to find the Lord was not there. So he still hasn't had any interaction with the Lord. Now watch what happens here. Shouted to them, "It is the Lord." This is so. There's some post-resurrection interaction here, but I want to show you this. I think this is important. John says to who? John says to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Peter heard him say that, he quickly wrapped his outer garment around him, and because he was athletic, he dove right into the lake to go see Jesus. The other disciples then brought the boat to shore, dragging their catch of fish. They were far from the land. They weren't far from the land, only about 100 meters. And when they got to the shore, they noticed a charcoal fire with some roasted fish and bread. Jesus said, "Bring some of the fish you just caught." So Peter waded into the water, helped pull the net to shore. It was full of many large fish, exactly 153. But even with so many fish, the net was not torn. "Come, let's have some breakfast," Jesus said. And not one of the disciples needed to ask who it was, because every one of them knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus came close to them and served them the bread and the fish. This was the 3rd time that Jesus appeared to his disciples after his resurrection. After they had breakfast, Jesus said to Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you burn with love for me more than these?" Peter answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I have great affection for you." Then he says, take care of my lambs," Jesus said. Jesus repeated his question the 2nd time, "Simon, son of John, do you burn with love for me?" Peter answered, "Yes, my Lord, you know that I have great affection for you." "Then take care of my sheep," Jesus said. Then Jesus asked him again, "Peter, son of John, do you have great affection for me?" Peter was saddened by being asked the 3rd time and said, "My Lord, you know everything. You know that I burn with love for you." Jesus replied, then feed my lambs. Peter, listen, when you were younger, you made your own choices and you went where you pleased. But one day when you are old, others will tie you up and escort you where you would not choose to go, and you will spread out your arms. Jesus said this to Peter as a prophecy of what kind of death he would die. Listen, for the glory of God. And then he says, Peter, follow me. What's the first thing Jesus ever says to Peter? Follow me. What's the end of the story filled with failure? Follow me. The narrative never changes in light of the failure. The invitation is still extended even in the midst of failure. So here's what I want to show you. So Adam and Eve transgressed the command of God by eating a piece of fruit, and they hide. Peter denies the Lord 3 times in history's most crucial hour, and certainly the Lord's most crucial hour. He just couldn't stay awake for a prayer meeting. He then fails the Lord by denying him 3 times. Then he locks gazes with the Lord after the 3rd denial. And listen, the response when he hears that Jesus is alive is not to hide, it's to run into the presence of the Lord. It's to get out of the boat and swim toward the one that he had violated and that caught. So listen. So what did Peter understand about the nature of God revealed in the person of Jesus that Adam did not? Okay. What did Peter understand about the nature of God revealed in the person of Jesus that I do not? Because the only way I know I'm seeing the Father correctly is to look at him through the lens that is Jesus. And when you fail, do you run and swim toward the presence of the one you failed? Or do you become really proficient at developing more advanced mask and hiding and covering? And hiding and covering. Now, that's not principally what I want to talk about, but it's some background I want to use to help us to know that Jesus did not simply come to deal with your eternal condition as it relates to heaven and hell. He came to fix the misconceptions of humanity about his Father. What did Peter know about the nature of God revealed through the person of Jesus that Adam did not? What did Peter know about the nature of God revealed in the person of Jesus that I have not known? That has caused me, by way of religion and legalism, to move far from him in a moment of failure and disappointment rather than to draw near to him in a moment of failure and disappointment. Because this shift taking place in the life of the believer is huge as it relates to longing and lingering and finding the degree of faithfulness we were designed for in the place of devotion. Because if disappointment, even in how much you prayed this week, has caused the judge to possibly change his mind concerning your case, then we're going to miss that in the midst of failure, Jesus doesn't make himself less accessible, he makes himself more accessible. He's near to the broken. Where sin doth abound, there much more does grace abound, right? When we know how to quote that verse, but do we live in that present reality? If you didn't do good in devotion this week, is it going to make you less likely to engage next week because you said, I failed? Don't look at me like you don't know what I'm talking about. Right? And so this religious mindset is, I want to earn my way back into his favor, instead of believing that even in the midst of the brokenness, there is accessibility that is actually the only legal way to have the inconsistency dealt with. Look how much different Peter's story ends from Adam's. Peter gets restored to his apostleship. Why? Why? Because he did not let a moment of failure become a point of identification. If your issues ever become your identity, then you're going to miss the transformation that is only available by in transparency exposing your issues to a degree of presence whereby you experience transformation. Come on, that's important. That's important. Okay, so what did Peter know in the nature of God? What did Peter know about the nature of God? Made manifest through the person of Yeshua that Adam did not. Okay? Propitiation, sure, but so much more. Peter feels grace to run toward and swim toward the one he had failed, not because he believed that Jesus on the cross had principally paid for him not to go to hell. He believed and understood that he paid for now a degree of relationship to be accessible, proximity to be granted, and it framed everything he thought about how to process failure. Jesus did so much more than deal with our legal issues. He came to fix our perspective of the Father.